You tuned into the Dedicated Reefer. Please let me explain. I'm dedicated to loving this hobby, from copepods to groupers, from hermit crabs to sea urchins, from Recordia to the most difficult SPS. I'm dedicated to understanding and learning as much as I can about this hobby I've grown to love so much. I'm dedicated to keeping an open mind. When I think I have the answer, I realize that I have much to learn. I'm dedicated to the health and happiness of every animal I choose to put in my tank. I'm dedicated to sharing knowledge and helping others through my failures and successes. Thanks for tuning in. Without further ado, here's your video. From yours truly, the Dedicated Reefer. Enjoy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gents, boys and girls. Here's a little process of how I acclimate my corals. I float them in the tank for about a half hour, anywhere from a half hour to about an hour and a half, depending on the size of the bag and how long they were in the shipping process. I normally get my corals from one source, and I drive them from my house or from the source's house back to my house, so I only do it for about a half hour, 20 minutes, and they're already up to temperature. Second, I test the salinity of the coral in the bags to make sure it's similar to mine. Third, I take it out and I put it in a bowl, and I I acclimate them, drip acclimate for about 45 minutes to 2 hours, generally, depending on where I get them. Knowing my source, and it's the same source, I generally do mine for about 45 minutes, give or take. That's the beginning of the acclimation process. Depending on where I get them from, like I said again, if I get it from the same source or the general guy that I get it from, I don't dip. But if I get it from a different place, then I do. In a minute, I'll let you know my dipping process. Here's a little bit about the corals that I'm about to acclimate. I'd say about 90% of my corals come from the same supplier, but if they don't, then my dipping process is this. I dip for I used to dip in Sea Chem's reef dip. That's what I started in. That's worked for years. This past couple of times, ever since actually Reef Palooza in 2021 that I went to, I got Brightwell Aquatics dip, and I've been using that ever since, and it's worked amazing on the couple of corals that I did have. I could see the flatworms coming off one of the euphyllias that I got. Other than that, my process is after acclimating into my salt water, I then dip it into a saltwater dip with the Brightwell Aquatics dip. And then after that, I do that for about 5 minutes while spraying it or squirting it with the baster. And after that, I dip it into rhodey water for about 2 to 3 minutes. And then I let it sit back in my salt water for about 5 minutes and give it a good rinsing off before I put it back in the tank. Other than that, like I said, I generally don't have to do that because the source that I get it from, I know his process, and he goes through a rigorous process before he even puts anything out to sell. So that's how that works. I generally just get it from the same guy. And if you feel comfortable getting it from the person that you're getting it from, then I suppose you don't have to dip unless you don't feel comfortable. I go over and see my guy's tanks often, and I look at him. Actually, I help him set his tanks up, so I know the process of what's.
Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.